It's that time of year to take a look at the odds for the entire NBA season. Now, the one thing we need to make clear before we go any further is that these are not my opinions. They are the consensus Vegas median projections. But let's kick things off with the current projected standings. In the Eastern Conference, there's a couple teams that it would really be shocking to see exceed their projection in any significant way, especially when you consider how strong most expect the top of next year's draft class to be. At the very bottom, you've got the Brooklyn Nets, who have the lowest win total in the entire league at 18.5. We're just going to round down the win totals from this point on. You've got the Wizards at 20, the Pistons at 25, a team that actually has a pretty wide range of outcomes this season. They're adding in some vets like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley to a quickly improving young core headlined by Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Asar Thompson. Just ahead of them is the Bulls at 27 wins, 12 games behind where they finished a year ago after losing DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso in the offseason. The final team projected to be on the outside looking in at the play-in with just 29 wins is the Toronto Raptors, but currently they're only one game behind the Hornets at 30. Then you see the Atlanta Hawks at 35 wins, and we really jump into a different tier before seeing the Miami Heat at 43 wins. Then you see both the Pacers and Magic at 47, the same exact amount of wins that both teams finished with this past year. Again, these are median projections. It's extremely likely that at least one of those teams will be a 50-win squad. The Pacers are getting their first full offseason since the trade for Siakam, and will also be getting Mathurin back from injury. Orlando addressed a lot of their holes this summer, bringing in a perfect fit in veteran Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Then their recent first-round selection, Tristan da Silva, at least based on the Summer League, looks likely to make an immediate impact. Just ahead of them is the Cavaliers, another team right at where they finished a season ago. The Milwaukee Bucks are one spot ahead of them at 50 wins. Then you see the 76ers at 51 after their blockbuster addition of Paul George. That would be 4 wins better than last year's finish. At 53 wins, the projected second seed in the Eastern Conference, you see the New York Knicks, quite possibly the most active team in the league over the past year. And really, assuming the core of Brunson, Mikal, Anunoby, and Cat are able to stay at least somewhat healthy, it's pretty easy to see a pathway to them smashing even this high of a projection. Then finally, with the highest win total in the Eastern Conference, you've got the Boston Celtics, last year's NBA champions, who are currently projected to finish with 58 wins. A mark that, despite being 5 wins higher than any other team in the conference, is still 6 less wins than they had a season ago. With the season just around the corner, I'm finally getting the chance to once again put together some entries on today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Far and away the best pick'em platform out there right now. It's super simple. They have squares from pretty much every sport for pretty much every single stat. You just pick more or less. Choose which kind of entry you want, and you can win up to 100 times your entry. Recently, I put one together for the entire NBA season. I went with Wembanyama to average more than 24.9 points. I also took the rookie Reed Shepherd to average more than 10 points. Then with Giddey out of town, I really like more on SGA's assists. I had to get that in there. Then lastly, I went with an interesting one. I'm taking Anthony Davis not to get a triple-double this season. These types of squares are always a fun sweat. If you guys want to check out Prize Picks, it's really the perfect time. They've got a bunch of promos going on right now. If you click the link in the description and use the code JIMMER when you sign up, after you play your first lineup for $5 or more, you're going to get $50 instantly. Then on top of that, they've got a free square right now for opening night where Anthony Edwards only has to score a single point. I've got a pretty good feeling he'll get there. Thank you Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. Going over to the Western Conference, you see the Portland Trailblazers as the heavy favorite to finish right at the bottom. Their line is at just 20 wins. Ahead of them is Utah at 27, followed by the Spurs at 35. While San Antonio being a bottom 3 team in the West might seem like a disappointing outcome for some, this would be a 13-win improvement from their 22 wins a year ago. Then you see the Clippers at 37. If there was more confidence surrounding Kawhi's health coming into this season, this would undoubtedly be much higher. Then it's the Lakers as the final non-play-in team with 42 wins. In the bottom side of the play-in bracket, you've got the Warriors and Rockets both at 43, 2 pretty mysterious teams entering this season. It's hard to guarantee too much in Golden State with the age of their top players, but given the very promising seasons a year ago from guys like Bajimski and Jonathan Kuminga, crushing this line is definitely within the range of outcomes. Then in Houston, there's really no question about the talent. The roster is filled with recent top picks and emerging young stars up and down. If things can click, like we saw at times a year ago, a breakout season is well within the cards. At the end of the day, with how young this team is, it's surprising to see their total just 2 wins ahead of last year's finish. The Sacramento Kings are 2 wins ahead of them at 45, 1 game behind where they finished a year ago despite bringing in DeMar DeRozan in the offseason. Also at 45 wins, coming off a big trade to bring in DeJounte Murray, is the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm really bullish on this team even in the immediate future, but this does feel like the right spot with them just with how uncertain their roster is coming into this season, mainly the future of Brandon Ingram, who's been heavily involved in trade rumors throughout this summer. At 46 wins, you see the Phoenix Suns, a team we all know can be a very serious threat when healthy, but with so much of their production concentrated to just a few players, a bad stretch of health can have them quickly falling down the standings in a tough Western Conference. The team expected to take the biggest jump year over year, and it's not close, is the Memphis Grizzlies at 47 wins, a 20-win improvement from last year's bottom 3 finish. Now this really shouldn't come as a surprise at all. They legitimately broke NBA records in 2024 for games missed due to injury. So despite there really not being much change to this roster outside of the rookie Zach Edey, this feels like a completely different team entering the season. Then tied at 50 wins, you've got the last 2 Western Conference champions, Denver and Dallas. For the Nuggets, this would be 7 games worse than last year, but that feels about right with the loss of KCP and the strength of the conference as things stand right now. For the Mavericks, despite making a run all the way to the finals and then bringing in Klay Thompson this summer, this would actually be the same exact record we saw from them a year ago. Now Dallas is actually a really interesting team to look back at when it comes to their odds. At this time last year, the median projection actually had them just barely missing out on the last play-in spot. But when you looked a little closer, it was clear that Vegas thought there was a wide range of outcomes for them, as they had better odds to make the playoffs than some of those teams with higher projected records, and when it came to the championship market, they actually had better odds than a majority of those projected playoff teams. But then getting back to this season, just 1 game ahead of them is their matchup in the Western Conference Finals, the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that it's hard to know what to expect from this season after making the blockbuster trade that sent Cat to New York in exchange for Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. Then the team currently at the very top of the Western Conference with 56 projected wins, second only to Boston in the entire league, is the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that despite being one of the youngest teams in the league a year ago, was able to finish as the top seed in the West with 57 wins. Coming into this season, it's hard to not see them being a 60+ win team, barring serious injury. Jalen Williams is only going into his 3rd season, Chet Holmgren only year 2 on the court, and nearly every single question mark on this roster from a year ago was addressed in full with their offseason additions of Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. But there it is, this year's projected standings. Now one thing it's important to realize here is how much further wins are going to go in the Eastern Conference compared to the West. Based on these projections, the Hornets are going to make the play-in with just 30 wins. That's expected to be a bottom 3 record in the West. Finishing with 12 more wins than that, the Lakers don't even make the play-in. Going over to the championship odds, we see the top spot belongs to the Boston Celtics. They're at plus 325, or just over a 3-1 chance to repeat. Behind them is OKC, they're at plus 700, an improvement from 950 when the lines opened before the offseason. The Knicks are in 3rd at plus 800, another team that's seen their odds skyrocket since the opening lines. Before making the deals for Cat and Bridges, they were at plus 1500 or 15-1. Philadelphia also started at 15-1, but after bringing in Paul George have climbed to 10-1. Then it's the Nuggets at 11-1, both the Mavericks and Timberwolves at 12-1, followed by the Bucks at 14-1. The odds more than double before you see Phoenix at 30-1, followed by the Lakers and Grizzlies at 40-1, and the Warriors at 45-1. Now let's get into the awards, beginning with 6th Man of the Year. Probably the least talked about award for fairly obvious reasons. The favorite right now is Malik Monk of the Kings, sitting at plus 600, followed by last year's winner Naz Reid at plus 1,000. Then it's his teammate Dante DiVincenzo in third at 14 to 1. Then it's Norman Powell and Karis LeVert at 16 to 1. Bobby Portis at 17, CJ McCollum at 18. Then we see a group at 20 to 1 with Jaime Jaquez, Russell Westbrook, and Benedict Mathurin. For Defensive Player of the Year, we see a massive favorite at the top, and it really shouldn't be too surprising. It's last year's Rookie of the Year and the first overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, someone who in just his first season in the league averaged nearly 4 blocks a game. His odds are at minus 150 or an implied 60% chance. The odds jump all the way up to 12 to 1 before you see Chet Holmgren. Then it's Bam Adebayo and Evan Mobley not far behind, followed by a group of previous winners in Gobert, Jaren Jackson, and Anthony Davis. For Most Improved, we see a familiar face at the top, Victor Wembanyama once again. Now when it comes to this award, his odds aren't nearly as strong, they're at plus 750. But seeing how much his numbers improved over the course of his rookie season, on top of his projected development in year 2 and the addition of one of the best passers in the league over the last 20 years, his place as the favorite seems justified. Behind him is Oklahoma City's Jalen Williams, someone who it looks like is in prime position to keep ascending up the wing ranks of the league on what is expected to be one of the best teams in the league. Just behind is Evan Mobley, followed by both Kuminga and Giddey now in Chicago at 16 to 1. Then it's Jalen Johnson at 18 to 1, before it jumps all the way to 30 to 1, where you see Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, and Jalen Green. Then we get to Rookie of the Year, which entering the season looks like an interesting race. There's a ton of guys in the mix, but the current favorite at plus 450 is the 9th overall pick to the Grizzlies, Zach Edey. Now Edey emerging as the odds-on favorite for this award is actually somewhat of a recent development. Prior to the draft, his line opened at 15 to 1, but after landing in the perfect situation in Memphis, then really impressing throughout his brief time in the Summer League and early on in the preseason, while some of the other top picks haven't quite lived up to expectations, has had him sticking out as the favorite as things stand right now. Then with a slight lead for second, you see the Rockets' top pick, Reed Shepherd, someone who showed out in the Summer League after putting together one of the most efficient college seasons we've ever seen. Now it seems like he's in for a pretty decent role in Houston, however it's not going to be easy to shell out a big share of the offense with how many mouths there are to feed there. Prior to the Summer League, the clear favorite in the odds market was the 2nd overall pick to the Washington Wizards, Alex Sarr, a player that many expected would be able to make an immediate impact on the defensive end, while also having one of the biggest guaranteed roles in this year's rookie class, something that ultimately is very important when it comes to this award, with how much it typically centers around box score production. Since the draft, however, Sarr's odds have come down quite a bit, currently at plus 800, a fall that was almost solely tied to his performance in the summer, which was, for lack of a better term, just ugly. He averaged less than 6 points and shot just 19% from the field. Now obviously Summer League is rarely a strong predictor of long-term success, but in this case, it's clear his performance cooled his immediate expectations. It's not until we reach the 4th best odds at plus 900 where we see this year's 1st overall pick, Zachary Rizaje. Now while Rizaje isn't the level of prospect we typically see go number 1, there's still a lot of excitement surrounding his long-term future given his skill in shooting at a 6'9" frame, and at least early on in the preseason, he's definitely making a case to be much higher than this. He dropped 18 points in his debut, then 14 in his second outing. But for right now, with the most likely role for him early on in Atlanta being a 3-and-D role player, his odds seem to be priced appropriately. Right behind him is Matas Buzelis at 10 to 1. Buzelis should have a pretty sizable role from the jump in Chicago, but while the talent with him has always been blatantly obvious, we've yet to see it all come together on a consistent basis just yet. It feels like the most likely outcome for his rookie season is that there's a bunch of really bright and promising moments, but when averaged out with the rest of the season, it might be tough to compete with some of the other rookie campaigns for this award. Another player that's seen his odds come down quite a bit is Stephon Castle, the Spurs' top pick in the recent draft. He opened at plus 750, the 3rd best odds at the time, only trailing the top 2 picks in the draft. He was expected to step into a big role alongside Wembanyama in San Antonio, but after the addition of Chris Paul in free agency, we've seen his odds come down to plus 1200. He's still expected to be a very big piece of the Spurs rotation, but with those floor general duties firmly in Paul's hands, his statistical projections have been lowered quite a bit. Then we jump to plus 1800 before we see Bub Carrington, the Wizards' second first-round selection of the draft, who really turned heads during the Summer League. In fact, I'm shocked to see his odds this high with how much opportunity should be for the taking in Washington. He's definitely my dark horse selection. Then you've got both Dalton Knecht and Rob Dillingham at 20-1. Players that most are excited about joining teams with championship hopes. But while one or both of them could be very impactful for LA and Minnesota, it's just not going to be easy to earn too many attempts given the current state of those rosters. The Pistons' top selection, Ron Holland, and the Blazers' top selection, Donovan Clingan, are at 30-1. Then it's Kel'el Ware at 35-1. Another really surprising placement given just how impressive he's been between the Summer League and early on in the preseason. Cody Williams is at 40-1, and then it's Phoenix's rookie, Ryan Dunn, at 50-1. But his odds are quickly flying up. He opened at 75-1. We really didn't get to see much from him during the Summer League, but so far in the preseason, he's easily been one of the most impressive rookies. His best performance came against Denver, where he dropped 20 points, going 6 for 11 from 3. What really made that performance so fascinating is how much of his value coming into the draft was tied to the other end of the floor, an area where in that same game, his impact was also being felt, finishing with 2 steals and 3 blocks. Right now, the Suns are desperate for production and really just reliable minutes outside their main core. So if this is even close to the Ryan Dunn we're going to see throughout the regular season, his odds will not be in this range for very long. Then we get to the biggest individual award of them all, the most valuable player. Unsurprisingly, the top odds are in the hands of Luka Doncic. I say this isn't surprising because this is now the 3rd year in a row he's entered the season as the odds-on favorite. He's at plus 380, but this is expected to be a close race. Just behind him, you see SGA at plus 475 and Nikola Jokic pretty much tied at plus 480. What's interesting about these three clearly sitting as the preseason favorites is that they're all in the Western Conference. We all know Luka Doncic is going to put together a ridiculous stat line on the season, but chances are, so will SGA and Jokic. So with the Mavericks, Nuggets, and Thunder all projected as top 4 seeds, it's looking like the Western Conference seeding could ultimately be the deciding factor in this race. The odds jump to 10-1 before you see Giannis Antetokounmpo, someone you can never have too low with where he ranks in the league on both ends of the floor. Then you've got Anthony Edwards, the top option on the other top 4 projected Western Conference team. Then the odds jump to 18-1 where you see Jalen Brunson. If his volume from a year ago holds and the Knicks have the success we're expecting, it won't be hard at all to build the case. Just after him is the face of the projected top record in the league, Jason Tatum. Then at 22-1, we actually see Victor Wembanyama, as mentioned, the favorite for both the Most Improved and Defensive Player of the Year awards. It's rare to see someone given this strong of odds a part of a team expected to finish with one of the worst records in their respective conference. But we also haven't seen a player like Wembanyama. He has a real chance to run away with Defensive Player of the Year while also posting insane box score production on both ends. If he's able to ramp up his scoring volume and get closer to the offensive production we're expecting to see from the names at the top of the odds, it's going to be hard to not at the least put him in the conversation. But even with that said, unless the Spurs exceed expectations as a team in a very, very significant way, I would say at the very least reaching the play-in tournament, it's hard to imagine the votes being there for Wemby just yet. After him, the odds quickly take off. JimmerRange at 40-1, Curry at 60-1, Durant at 80-1, and Zion Williamson and Halliburton both at 100-1. There it is, the odds for the entire NBA season.